Okay. You can start.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for all of those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Miguel Ceballos. I'm director of the Ethnic Studies Institute and associate professor of sociology. The Institute offers an ethnic studies minor that provides students with a critical understanding of the social, cultural, and historical experiences of racial and ethnic minority groups in the United States. We offer a minor to any student, regardless of major, and we have 6 concentrations, including African American Studies, Asian American Studies, Jewish American Studies, Latino Studies, Native American Studies, and Multi-Ethnic Studies. In spring, we plan to introduce a new concentration called Race and Social Justice. This event today is part of the Ethnic Studies Institute's fall seminar series on race and social justice that addresses important contemporary issues to help us understand the experience of racial and ethnic minorities today. Today's presentation is co-sponsored with the WCU Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology, the Anthropology Club, the Department of Art and Design, and the Office of Sustainability. This series also has 2 more events this semester. We've had 2 so far. This is our 3rd. And on Monday, November 9th, we'll have a presentation on Indigenous photography with Jada Gray Eagle, Oglala Lakota photographer, artist, and filmmaker. She'll discuss Native American photography and the revitalization of Indigenous symbols in art. And on Thursday, November 12th, together with the Frederick Douglass Institute's Lunch Encounters and Courageous Conversations, we'll present policing and police violence in the Black and Latino communities. There'll be a discussion on contemporary policing events, Black Lives Matter, and the historical context of policing.
All these articulations.
At the end of the seminar today, we invite you to complete a brief feedback.
Attached, like forming a structure.
A brief feedback survey that will be available before we close. Okay, I'll share the screen where you can click on the link for the survey.
Could I just ask that everybody
tomorrow during the test?
Hold on one second, guys. Can I ask that everybody mute themselves, please, because some people are on and talking. So just to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thanks. So anyway, again, thank you all for joining us today. Let me turn it over to Michael, Dr. DeJovene, to introduce Christi Belcourt. Michael.
Well, thank you. I'm just seeing that people are writing for Zoom links. So hold on one second.
For Zoom links.
Okay. Well, all right. Thank you very much. Please remember to mute yourself if you can, and then there'll be time for questions afterwards. I just want to begin before even welcoming and introducing Christi Belcourt, just to acknowledge that Westchester University is situated in Lenape-Hoking, the traditional and ancestral home of the Lenape. We pay respect to the Lenape, past, present, and future, and to their continuing cultural heritage and connections with this homeland. I'm Michael DeJovene. I'm an associate professor of anthropology here at Westchester University. I'm the director of our museum studies program with a museum studies minor. I'm also the director of our Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology, where every year students put up an exhibition. This past year was supposed to be a celebration of Earth Day at 50. Is the name of the exhibition. Unfortunately, we've pushed it a little bit, but we're beginning to install it now. So as soon as it's up, we'll send out more information about it, and hopefully sometime soon we can have an opening and people can actually come and see it. But I'm really pleased and honored today to introduce Christi Belcourt. She's from the Métis community of Lac Saint Anne, Alberta. She's a visual artist, environmentalist, social justice advocate, designer, and avid land-based arts and language learner. Her work is found within many public gallery collections across North America. She was named the Aboriginal Arts Laureate for 2014 by the Ontario Arts Council. In 2016, she received both the Premier's Arts Award and a Governor General's Award for Innovation. As a designer, Christi has done a lot. She's collaborated with the House of Valentino. She designed the medals for the Toronto Pan American and Para Pan American Games in 2015. She also worked in collaboration with many companies to produce products, with the proceeds of all her work donated to the Nimke Awazi Bikon, which is a year-round Indigenous language and traditional arts camp that she, along with groups of with a group of people, started in 2017. And this camp is committed to the revitalization of Ojibwe language, along with providing opportunities for elders and youth to come together in a land-based learning environment. And she'll probably talk a little bit more about that camp in her talk today. Now, even though she's a prolific and visual artist and designer, Christi's work as an activist in environmentalism, social and community-based justice is a work that takes up the majority of their time and her life work that she feels is most important. And I don't know if you guys can see, I know there's a lot of people here, but if you can see a screen with my name on it, a second screen, you'll see the art and some of the banners that she designed and loaned us for our exhibition. I'm sorry, this isn't the way the exhibition is going to look, Christi. On the this is just in my office right now. But she has done a lot of environmental activism. In 2009, her work as a lead organizer in the Willisville Mountain Project helped save a mountain from a mining company. And in 2012, she began a 7-year project, Walking with Our Sisters, a commemorative installation to honor the lives of murdered and missing Indigenous women, which just wrapped up last year after touring to over 30 locations around North America. And what really drew us in the museum and the students who were doing the Earth Day exhibit to her work was her work with the Onamun collective.
You know what Keelan told me today?
So in
She put on Facebook
2014,
just to see if anybody wants to take her thing for.
in 2014,
Yeah.
she started working with Isaac Murdoch and found the Onamun Collective. Together, their work combined
But if
social
nobody
activism,
tells, then-
environmentalism with
Right.
land-based activities, and their artwork has been silkscreened onto thousands of banners across North America, seen many climate and water protection activities. And you can see some of those silkscreen banners up in that other that other thing today. So I'm going to, she also has her own arts practice in connection with the planet expressed in her work. Her work with Isaac Murdoch in the Onamun Collective and the Land-Based Learning Camp. She'll be speaking on all of these today. And, you know, without further ado, I welcome Christi Belcourt.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. There's always some glitches with these Zoom things, you know. I haven't quite got used to them yet either. But you know, technology can be wonderful and terrible all at the same time. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you also for you know, tuning in to listen. Thank you, Michael, for your work in this area and inviting me to be part of this today. My beautiful background, which is my dryer with a paint on top, so I can like kind of mask that I'm, you know, surrounded by my art. My background picture for this thing didn't work for some reason because I'm on my desktop instead of my laptop, and so yeah, you get the dryer and the doors in the background. But so what I wanted to do today was share my screen and then go into a PowerPoint presentation. I think that that's going to be the way that that we're going to be able to do this best, so that you can see the images as I'm speaking. I'm going to try and move it along as quickly as possible. Michael, you can send me a private message when I've reached like the half-hour mark, because I don't know when that's going to be. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and just ignore my messy desktop for a minute while I get into the PowerPoint thing. And then hopefully everything will go well. Okay, here we are. I'm assuming that you can see can you see my screen, Michael? Can you give me a thumbs up? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Might want to put it bigger though.
Yeah, I'm gonna just play it from the. So I think that this should work. Here we go. Everything good? Okay, great. Okay, warning. This ends with a revolution. This presentation is not going to be comfortable and convenient, and it shouldn't be. Indigenous people have endured 400 years of genocide, murder, dispossession, and the theft of our lands. oppression, colonialism, racism, thousands of children stolen, and a total breakdown of families and communities, forced assimilation, sterilization, and sickening medical experiments and torture on Indigenous children. Most Indigenous languages are now in a state of national emergency in both countries, Canada and the United States. Indigenous people continue to be murdered. Our children continue to be stolen by the thousands into children's aid societies and assimilated in educational systems that are enshrined into law. And we suffer debilitating poverty and must endure the pompous expressions of superiority by the dominant society at every turn. Everything that has been thrown at us was intended to wipe us off the face of the earth as recognizable, sovereign, and distinct Indigenous nations with our own languages, our own histories, and our own creation stories, and our ways of being and knowing. Do you know how many Indigenous nations exist in North America? How can we have a relationship if the majority of people who have settled here don't understand who we are, what the original places were named on this continent, or how our ancestors created beautiful worlds for us to inherit? My people are the Michif people from Manitou-Saukegan, which are buffalo, moose, and fish people. My name is Christi Belcourt, but I also have a spirit name, which is Bidanaquatuk. Of course, we share this type of naming and understanding of place and who we are to the land. My nation shares that with other Indigenous nations across the continent. Before colonialism shattered our communities and dispossessed us from our lands, we relied on the buffalo for almost everything. We recognized the buffalo as a nation. They were 90 million strong, as we were before their genocide occurred. They were annihilated because of Europeans' hatred of us. We have songs for the buffalo. There are buffalo ceremonies. They hold the doorway in our sacred lodges, and we have creation stories of them, such as this one about the first grandmother that was given to me as a story after I gave my great auntie some offerings. Offerings are something that I'll talk about a bit later because they're really important to understand what offerings are. In this story, there's a little baby who was found by the buffalo people on the prairies, and they raise her and teach her all they know until she gets to be a little girl, and then they take her into a human community and ask the community to raise her. She always knows that she's different from the people there, and I can't share this whole story here, but she ends up finding out she is born of the moon and the sun, and she becomes a very powerful medicine woman and teaches the people about the medicines. She's our first grandmother, our elder's brother's grandmother. Elder brother, as we know, as the trickster, and he created the world we know today. We respected the buffalo and held them in high regard. Our lives were lived on the land with them, entirely with the rhythms of the earth. We traveled freely as they did. The buffalo gave us everything, and I'm alive today because of them. It would not be possible for me to be sitting here with you if it wasn't for them. Them and the moose and the fish and the plants and the medicines and the stars and the waters. We are here because of the earth and the power that she holds. Sharing, giving, and generosity is in the DNA of Indigenous peoples. Because as I mentioned, our worldview and existence was based on the concept of living in balance with all creation. We understood then, as we do now, that there are powerful spirits that sing and exist in everything, and we are at the mercy of them. There's a spirit in the earth itself. There are spirits in the water, and we make offerings to them. Offerings are gifts that are given to keep everything in balance. They're given with the utmost respect and in a respectful and gentle way. The waters are viewed as the lifeblood of Mother Earth, so highly regarded that certain lakes were considered off limits only to the grandmothers as they would go pick their medicines there. Our original place names hold many of these teachings about the land. Our relationships also with the animals, insects, fish, and birds are ones of gratitude and respect, and we know that we are at the bottom of the food chain, not the top. We need everything, and nothing needs us to survive. Our entire governance structures were based on the animals and spirit of the earth. Our relationships with the animals, insects, fish, and birds are one of gratitude and respect. Wisdom of the universe. We knew that all human beings are spirits as well, and we in fact are all one, that the air you breathe is my breath, that the water I drink is really part of you. Chief Seattle once said, "Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. All things share the same breath. The beast, the tree, the man, the air shares its spirit with all the life it supports." I believe that healing comes from the earth, that plants not only have healing powers, but they communicate with us. They can carry sickness away. They are generous and kind, and they never stop giving to this earth and all of life. My great auntie, my Kokum sister, told me about her mom using a poplar tree and a hair from the head of her brother to cure an abscessed tooth. Now, skeptics in Western medicine will say that this isn't possible, but we live in a world where this guy is possible, and we share the earth with him, and with her, and with him, and with this mom, and with this mom, and with this mom and baby, and with this wonderful, beautiful Luna moth, and with beautiful, amazing plants that look more like aliens sometimes when you really take a look at them. And this butterfly that is born out of a little tiny seed that, goes through amazing transformations, is amazing in its inspiration of strength and endurance. Our planet is a big ball of water floating in outer space, circling a big ball of fire floating in outer space. And if this is possible, then anything is possible. So how did we get to this point? Our entire world as we know it today holds the concepts of individual rights over the collective, or the rights of animals or waters to exist in health and well-being, under the belief that capitalism leads to a better life for all. It is a belief system, one that we have been conditioned to believe, that is destroying this world. The concepts of individual rights to accumulate wealth and the right to take without giving has set the world on a course of destruction. Everywhere we look, this planet is being covered by garbage and radioactive waste because of this belief. This is a map of the Great Lakes showing the different spots where nuclear burial sites are located, and pipelines and other resource extractive, destructive mining sites. There are 16 nuclear power plants and uranium mining sites that sit around the freshest, largest body of water on the planet. There are over 1,000 oil spills a year from pipelines in Canada alone, and nobody raises an eyebrow. I don't know what the stats are for the United States, but I think it's similar. Where there's a 65-year-old pipeline with a 50-year shelf life that is pumping millions of liters of oil a day through it, and there's not a massive outcry. And it's lying underneath the Great Lakes right now between Sault Ste. Marie in the States and Sault Ste. Marie in Canada. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization on this side of the border is pushing to bury nuclear waste in the Great Lakes watershed. And all of Canada is not even up in arms about it. Entire ecosystems have been destroyed at the tar sands in northern Alberta. And this is so very few people can make billions of dollars, while we, the people, subsidize and pay for that through our tax system. And the fish up there are exhibiting a lot of cancers. The Indigenous people whose land that is are also experiencing illnesses and cancers at higher rates. There's deformities happening. In our oceans, 43% of all ocean mammals have experienced plastic 86% that live in the water have experienced plastic. 44% of all ocean bird species have been found with plastic in their stomach. We human beings must change our way of thinking from greed. So this comes back to what I first spoke about at the central core, that the antidote to greed itself is giving. We are spirits here, surrounded by spirits everywhere. The planet and this life leave me in utter awe, and we are in a state of constant gratitude to the animals, the waters, and the earth for this life. And what we are doing to our mother is reprehensible. This is how many birds are being found now. This is something that we need to talk about in terms of our destruction of the earth and our disrespect to animals. Factory farming is one of the most probably, I don't know, terrible things that we as human beings do. These are male chicks, which are sorted from female chicks, and they are just quote unquote disposed of. This is, we have come to a tipping point where the earth simply cannot sustain our insatiable greed and belief in individual rights. We must shift our thinking to having a responsibility rather than rights, or we are all going to go down this path together of immense suffering. If we don't now become all activists to take control, we the people have the power to change things, and we have to believe that. We need to talk about why we were pushed off our lands as Indigenous people. We need to talk about resource extraction. We need to understand that the reason why Indigenous peoples were dispossessed of our lands was for the resources. When we understand that, we will understand the state of the world and how colonialism throughout the globe morphed into capitalism, which is hidden and disguised as democracy, which consistently only serves the 1%. It's not possible under the current monetary global system, which was based on European ideas, for this earth to be sustainable. What this means is we need to come up with a new way of thinking and of governing ourselves. We need to abandon the idea that there are only a couple forms of governance and that democracy is the one or I should say capitalism is the one that's on top, or the one that's going to be saving the world, because it's been proven, I think, we've been able to prove that it doesn't. So this is what's happening across the globe. And as this is happening, we're seeing uprisings and revolutions as the 99% are awake and aware that the 1% have no right to rule. They have no right to rape and pillage and murder for their own insatiable growth and profits. It's simply unsustainable, and people are not disposable, and they're starting to stand up everywhere. And so this is part of the work that Isaac Murdoch and I do through the Ottoman Collective, is we travel around, or we do banners, and then we send them all over the place. The one that is on the top left was a movement against Energy East Pipeline. That was a protest that took place in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and the one on the bottom right is in Vancouver, BC, and that's to stop the Kinder Morgan pipeline. The Kinder Morgan pipeline renamed itself into the Trans Mountain when our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau purchased the pipeline for $12 billion. This pipeline project is a twinning of a pipeline, which means that there's an existing pipeline and they want to build another one beside it to double the amount of bitumen going through from Alberta tar sands to the West Coast, where it would be picked up on ships and shipped around the oceans. So people are starting to speak up against that. What we do is we travel around to different communities. This is Isaac and I in Washington. We went and painted that banner on the just on the street there, which was really cool. And then up in the right-hand corner, that was in Vancouver. We printed probably about 900 banners, I believe, that weekend. This one was for Bring Our Children Home, which is a campaign nationally here that's trying to speak out against the theft of Indigenous children into child welfare systems, which are currently making huge amounts of profit off of the theft of our children and the injustices that are happening there. It sort of went from residential schools right into children's aid. That's where it went to. This is Isaac Murdoch's Thunderbird woman being painted in front of Wells Fargo in San Francisco on the streets. That was a really cool action organized by 350.org. And let's see. Okay, so if there's any educators that are listening to this, I want you to know that you can do more than you know, because you have to have the courage to want to disrupt the system, not just teach about it. You must have the courage to join with each other as educators and to intend to turn the system on its head, so that you rebuild schools not as institutions, but towards the natural state of bringing children and youth and adults to the land, so that they can, even in cities, there are places to do this, so that people can have a chance to connect with nature and thereby protect it. They can also have a chance to grow up as free thinkers and to be able to find solutions that we're not able to find in this generation because of our own conditioning. So justice for me is not limited to an idea of us all getting along as we kill this planet. Justice must begin with the animals and the waters, and it must begin with us all asking for that forgiveness from them and deciding that we will set a new course based on respect and sharing, so that all living beings can be healthy and thrive. What we need is a revolution. We need a revolution of the mind, revolution of our actions, and a revolution of language revitalization. And it need not be violent. It can be as gentle as a grandmother deciding to carry a pail of water around to reinvigorate the ceremonies in our minds towards protecting the waters. We need a revolution of love. And it means finding ways to work in communities to support one another and to build something new without waiting for permission, like we are all doing at Nimkiajabikong. And this will be the last subject that I touch upon in my presentation today, is about the language and land-based arts camp, traditional activist, not activist, it's not an activist camp, it's a language camp, and it's an arts camp, and it's a traditional way of knowing and being on the land. It's located in Northern Ontario, north of Elliott Lake. This is the lake that it's on. And at this camp, we try and bring elders and children, or elders and youth, together. The gentleman on the right, Preston, he's a young man who's really learning how to survive on the land. He's a 19, he's already a father of 3. He's a really amazing young man, and he can do a lot. And then we build our lodges out there, and we hold ceremonies. And this is some people coming to visit that weekend to help us strip some poles for the lodges. There's one of our lodges where we have our ceremonies, and sometimes we just have really cool gatherings in there. This is one of the elders' cabins. And we are, actually, that's Isaac's house. Sorry, I got that mixed up. And we built 6 different houses there for people. We live there year round. The aquarium up on the left is just a tool shed and shed for stuff. The middle, that's our cook shack. So that's like, it's a 3-season cook shack, so we can use it to cook in and just to gather in, not good for the winter. And you can see the lodge on the right-hand photo in the background, covered in lots of snow. We get lots and lots and lots of snow there. And this is just a gathering that we had with some people that came up and wanted to share and visit. And we'll have like storytelling around the fire. We get together quite a bit to organize other things, events. We had this really amazing traditional Indigenous tattoo gathering there. We invited tattoo artists from across North America, and New is from Mexico. So they came up and did tattooing and taught about tattooing and spoke about the revitalization efforts in their area. We have moccasin making workshops sometimes. This is one of our elders, Wasan. She's a really amazing basket weaver. She works with natural fibers. On the left, she's making a birch bark basket to be able to boil soup over top of the fire, which I did not even think was even possible, and it totally is. And I witnessed it with my own eyes. The birch did not catch fire and the soup boiled. It was incredible. And then on the right, that's a bunch of us who have made these cedar woven mats that she taught us how to weave. And this is one of our youth, Taryn. She's making a bigger mat. She's working, this is the second workshop that Wasan came and did. This is Denise Legemodier. She's from Turtle Mountain, and she came and taught us birch bark biting, which is really neat. One of the, two of the young people went and got a moose, and they came back, and we spent the next quite a few days harvesting that moose and preparing it. We also learned how to do moose hides under the tutelage of Mila, who's standing in the background, sort of watching us do things. She's an amazing teacher. If you ever want to learn how to do moose hides, contact her. There's our first moose hide, finally smoked, and it turned out beautifully. And we also do a lot around language. So we turned Monopoly into Anishinaabe language. We got all the parts of the moose done in the language. We have lessons year round in the language. There's 6 of us that live at the camp year round. So, and then there's Isaac and I painting to fundraise, because that seems to be all we've done in the last like 4 years is just fundraise. This whole camp was built without any government funding. We fundraised and fundraised and fundraised and are still fundraising for it. We need a revolution for Mother Earth, for our languages, and for the future generations of all species. Power to the babies. And that's my presentation. So I need to figure out how to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And I don't know, Michael, if now you want to turn it over to questions or what you
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
do.
I mean, we have a lot. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have about almost 100 people from different classes. So just so you know, so I have people from my Sustainable Food Systems class. This is co-sponsored by the Sustainability Research Council. From my Museum Studies class, we have at least one, Kate's a studio art class, I think. So there's a lot of questions, I'm sure, from various perspectives. But I just wanted to say, thank you for this. I mean, this is a lot of stuff that we really emphasize, of course, and also in anthropology about language acquisition and preservation, and heritage. So I think a lot of this, and also thinking differently, right, about alternate ways of governance, alternate ways of distributing power and resources. There's not just one way to do it. This is a fundamental thing that we should know. So let's open it up to any questions. We have a lot of my students had questions. Who's going to ask a question?
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this presentation, and I wanted to share. I don't know if you could see this, but I was just in Miami and I saw some of this street art, and it was really beautiful.
There's an American flag. I think it's the opposite.
No. It's a native Captain America.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. And also, just if anybody's interested, if you go on the Delaware Tribe website, you could actually get like Rosetta Stone for the Lenape language.
Yep. And do we have the cultural minister, the director of cultural affairs of the Delaware Tribe here?
So Michael, I think that they had trouble getting in to the Zoom, but if you're okay with it, I can share it with them because it's been recorded. So you guys can tell me later if you think it's okay if I share the recording with them.
Okay. So I'll kick off a question then. So
I put a question in the chat
good.
too. You can get to it later.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. Why don't you ask it?
Okay, I just wanted to see if we could hear a little bit more about the language revitalization, because I know there's been some really cool kind of cutting edge work with that up in Canada. Specifically, I was at the museum on Vancouver Island in Victoria, and saw some of the native language apps that were being utilized. So I don't know if that's something that you see as becoming more and more maybe widespread to continue to transmit language to youth culture.
Thanks for your question. So there is a whole movement of language revitalization, sort of movement activists, I suppose, but they're really nerdy. And so they're not on the front lines. You won't see them anywhere, but they work so hard, and they've worked hard. There's been a movement in the region where I live for about 30 years, and it's just starting now to kind of play out. So what I can tell you about what I've seen work and what doesn't work is in our own learning up at the camp, we found that immersion doesn't work for beginners because unless you're in a lived environment where you're able to live with actual fluent first language speakers for sustained periods of time, or a community, then immersion all the time won't work. But what we've been told is that there are several sort of aspects to language revitalization that you all have to hit those points. One of them is you have to study the grammar. If you're an adult learner, if you're a child, you don't need to study grammar. You're going to pick it up. But if you're an adult learner and it's your second language, which it should be your first language, I know, but if it's your second language that you're trying to learn, then you have to study grammar, and that can get really nerdy and boring. Number two is you have to be able to listen. So you have to do exercises to tune your ear up. So that's like listening to stories, listening to fluent speakers, and trying to like really listen intently. Another one is to practice translation. So taking those stories and trying to write it out as best as you can. So slowly listening on some app that will make you be able to hear it better. Another one is speaking. You have to speak. So if you don't make the leap, you can learn all you want to learn, but if you actually don't make the leap to speaking a few words, you'll never be a speaker. The limitations of apps, so the bonuses of apps is that it makes a language widely accessible. The limitations of apps is that they don't work for a grammar structure. For example, in Cree language, which is the language of my people, there are 7 personal pronouns, and each sentence is structured with a root verb in the center, with the personal pronoun indicator at the beginning, and the and maybe the tense marker, and then what's happening at the end. So like an actual sentence can be a word that's like this big, made up of different parts. And so with apps, you'll only basically get nouns, whereas with Cree, it's a verb-based language. So you have to learn how to say not just table, but what is happening with the table. Like, is it on the table? What's on the table? Is it animate? Is it inanimate? Like it's complicated. So apps are not, they have real limitations. There's limitations in learning languages in schools if you're not learning it full time. There's been some really successful programs in universities and other immersion programs when people have really concentrated the language and made that the number one thing that they're learning. It's worked. We're trying the land-based approach, which is trying to be a consistent and have the same learners there all the time, learning as a cohort to sort of like increase our language and try and be comfortable to use the language with each other. So there's many different ways. There's many limitations. None of them are perfect. It's a climb up a very large mountain. there's no way around it. You have to put the work in. You put the work in, the hours in, and you benefit from it. And I would say just don't rely on one method or one source, or you almost have to eat and breathe and live the language in every day to get it. But I've known people that have become fluent within 3 years of their language without knowing anything by doing that, by absorbing themselves into it. Thanks for the question.
Can I follow up with another question? So my anthropology class just finished doing linguistic anthropology and thinking about the connection between language, mind, and culture. Why learn the language for you? Can you elaborate a little bit more about why it's important to learn the language?
Why it's important for me to learn the language is because within the language is coded a way of thinking. So it's a different worldview that doesn't exist in English. So in order to understand better how our ancestors would have been thinking about the earth and the proper way to live on this earth in a respectful way, it's embedded, it's encoded in the belief system of the language. There's different forms of manners, different forms of politeness, different protocols that are culturally based, but they're embedded in the language. The language is it's practical, it's useful, but it's also can give you insight into a different way of thinking that doesn't exist in English. And it's that, I think, that I'm after more than anything else, is trying to regain all of those things that were stolen from us or lost. And in addition, my grandparents were both fluent Cree speakers. I'm learning Anishinaabe, which is, if anybody knows this language group, which is an Algonquin-based language group, you'll know that it's the same type of language. So it transfers over very nicely. There's a lot of words that are the same or similar, and the grammar structure is identical. So it's very easy for me to learn one from the region in which I live, and then transfer it over to my grandparents' language.
Thank
I have a
you.
question. Well, first of all, thank you, Ms. Belcourt, for taking the time to speak with us today. Your presentation was very moving. I also watched your final keynote speech, and it definitely made me feel some things. And I have two questions, actually. One's like more of like for my own personal knowledge. But first off, I know that a lot of change has to come on a collective level, and there's not all that much that we can do on an individual level for us to make that much of a difference. But is there anything that we can do on an individual level to assist in this revolution? I mean, like, more so than just having a personal respect for the earth and looking at it as all connected and looking at it as everything is sacred. Like, is there something more we can do? And then my other question was, when did you start expressing yourself through art?
Okay, so I started expressing myself through, I'm going to go backwards. I started expressing myself through art when I was a little girl, and somebody asked me once, like, well, I think I was like 6 years old. They said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" That classic question. And I said artist, and it caught me off guard because I don't even think anybody in my family was an artist or knew what that word was. So I think that it was kind of like in me for a very long time. But I started doing it full time in 2020. No, sorry, 2000, 20 years ago. I quit my job and started doing art full time. So but I've always been doing it. So to your question about what can we do as individuals, there's lots that we can do as individuals. I know it feels helpless, and I know it feels like, why should I bother, turning my lights off when the building that's owned by, I don't know, a banking company leaves their lights on all night long, or why should I bother like recycling my little thing of plastic when McDonald's is like literally filling a landfill all on their own, so it really feels like almost defeatist, or feels very depressing, and that we can't do anything. But one of the biggest things that we can do, one of the most important things that we can do, is we can look at our meat consumption. We can look at where our meat comes from. If you're a meat eater, then definitely avoiding factory farmed meats, including fish farm meats, fish farm fish. So like almost all things that are labeled Atlantic salmon are from fish farms, and they're harming the sockeye, the wild sockeye, and the wild fish. So we have to be able to curb or change our way of eating. And that's going to be a big, huge change. Eating out less often, cooking more at home, that whole 100-mile food movement that was happening quite a while ago, that's really important. Buy locally, preserve your food, start to eat it, just prepare your own food. Be more conscious of your food, because in large part, our need to eat causes a lot of the destruction around the world. Secondly, my daughter, for example, has started buying all of her clothes at secondhand clothing stores. So she's not buying any clothes at new places anymore at all. And she looks really sharp and cool, you know? And so she's taking that stand. For me, I'm trying to look into making sure that my next vehicle is going to be an electric vehicle, if you're able to even have a vehicle. I'm doing little things that I can, but I think that if we all did that, then it would all add up to big things. So, you know, yes, is a light bulb gonna, if you turn off the lights, if we all did, yeah, it probably would. You know, but one of the biggest problems is the food industry that puts out a lot of emissions. Also divesting. So if you work in an institution where your retirement is invested for you, start to join up with your other colleagues and find out if are you invested in resource extraction industries, and then make the move as groups to divest from that. Also going to a grocery store, your local grocery store, and saying, hey, can you bring in recyclable or not recyclable, but like washable straws, or, you know, can you start to bring in more sustainable products? Can you, you know, and start to meet with your local grocer and ask for those things to be brought in. I mean, we're not going to be able to get rid of capitalism right away, obviously, but in the meantime, there's things that we could do to try and influence the market, and we should, as whole groups of people. Also, you can go to your local, you can start community gardens, preserve the food from that, start bringing food to your elders, go to your local, you know, a local community and try and connect with each other and do things together as a community. So there's a whole lot of little tiny things that we can do, which all add up to big things. Plant trees every chance you get. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I have a question as well. So you talked about in your answer for her, you talked to specifically like individual or capitalism and like individual like ways to affect it, but you also talked about in your speech like how it's ingrained within democracy, and especially when you think about the American democracy and both parties. I just want to know, like, what do you think overall on a major scale, what would be the steps that need to be taken to like raise awareness that within our capitalist democracy that environmental rights is an ethnic or civil rights issue? And why do you think that it has come more of why do you think it has surfaced more recently and more aggressively?
Oh my God, that's such a huge question. I don't know if I can answer it, but that is
Sorry
such,
about
like,
that.
I know that is a great question. I think that is like at the fundamental foundation of, if we know the answers to that, we'll have saved the world. So what I can say is that most recently, my friend Isaac is always saying this, it's not about rights, it's about responsibilities. And so changing our way of thinking to responsibility. I often think that if you had a bucket of water and you had 10 people in front of it, you said everybody has a right to this water, you'd have an argument at the end of the day. People would have divvied up the water according to what they felt was their right to the water. If you say that we have a responsibility for the water, the bucket would be full at the end of the day and everybody would have just sipped what they needed to survive. So when we think about responsibilities and we think about what is our responsibility rather than rights, then because when we set up a rights-based agenda, we're like this all the time, we're clashing with each other. Everybody thinks that they have all these rights when really it's a responsibility. So that's one thing. What we should do step by step, I don't know. I'm just like unaware of what we should do. I wish I did know. What I do know is that I hope for a world that is just in the future. I hope for a world that does have less suffering in the future. And I hope for a world that has different systems set up where people are taken care of. There should be no reason at all why every single human being cannot have access to healthcare, cannot have access to food, cannot have access to clean water, and every single animal at the same time. So when we look at the systems that are what's causing it not to be that way, then those are what we need to start to attack. And I really believe that it's the 1% that has really pulled the wool over all of our eyes into believing that the democracy is somehow a fair system that's going to result in fairness for all. And it's been proven time and time and again that it doesn't. Not only your system there with the two-party system, but we have the equivalent here in Canada, which is a three-party system, but the 1/3 party has never been elected. So it goes back and forth between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And, you know, it's the same thing over and over again. You get promises on one side, promises on the other. It always ends up being spending $12 billion to support a pipeline. And in the meantime, you have whole communities that don't have clean water to drink. So it's our priorities and it's doable. So as long as we're continually speaking about this, we don't have to argue about it. We just have to present the facts. I think people are smart enough to determine for themselves that this is true, you know? Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't answer your question in a more better way.
I just love what you're saying, and I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in, and I just thank you for your work, your artwork, but also the hitting the pavement kind of work that you're doing. It's so necessary and important for all of us to learn from. I have so many questions for you, and I will try to sort of pull them all together, but I wonder if, and I don't want to sound very like Pollyanna in this, but do you sense that there may be a kind of paradigm shift occurring? And that's maybe a little touchy-feely or really hard to identify. But you know, I think there's a lot of really important work happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, and just recognizing systemic inequity across the board, inequalities across the board. And I don't know, I just wonder if you feel a sort of shift occurring, and also how do you stay energized and not positive, but energized to do your work, because you're taking on so much. And I would think that there would be a need for taking breaks. Sorry, that's a lot. I'll talk about that for about an hour or so, but thank you so much, Christi. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks. Okay, how do I stay energized? No, I don't. I do have crash and burn at times. It's nobody can take on a whole lot of work, you know, and expect to keep on going forever. So self-care is really important. It's something that I don't practice well, but it's something that I know I should practice better. So that's it. And then how do I stay positive? Or that was a question. What was your first question? I forgot.
Sorry, yeah, there was a lot there to chew on. I think what I'm wondering, do you feel like this moment may be a sort of paradigm shift in terms of, like, there's so many movements abound, and I mean, it's exciting, and it's hard to also know where to put your energy, but I do think that for me anyway, from my limited lifespan, I'm seeing things happening. Hopefully it's not a trend or a one-time thing.
Well, to be honest, I don't like the direction that the world is going. I do see that things are not going to be good. If we follow the trajectory that we are on now, it's definitely 100% worse for the future generations, which makes it important and vital for us now to take time out of our lives and our busy schedules to actually take action. So it's not enough to sit and watch. It's not enough to voice your opinion on the internet, because this world is not real. What's real is the water that needs cleaning up. What's real is connecting with community members that you would be too shy or scared to connect with. What's real is trying to build bridges between people and understanding, which is really difficult to do when there's such a dichotomy between it seems like the world is just splitting and a great big divide is happening. So where do I see things headed? Unfortunately, to be honest, I see things headed towards war. And that's war on this continent, and it's not a good place to be. So what are we going to do about it? Because if we're going to let the fascism take hold, or we're going to let those things take hold, then we're just standing by and watching, and that's not enough. We have to do something more than that. And so, you know, there was a lot of prophecies that were made by Indigenous people, shared amongst Indigenous people. And one of those prophecies is says that the world will turn upside down and things will begin to fall off. Another one says that there will be two different sides, and and that people won't understand each other. And I think that we're seeing that happen. I didn't understand when I heard these prophecies. Or another one says that thunderbirds will come from the sky and basically kill everybody and cleanse the earth. So cleansing the earth with fire is another one. So I think that we're seeing these things, but what I didn't realize when I heard these prophecies a long time ago is I didn't realize that they were instigated by human behavior. And now I'm seeing that it's really just ourselves that's doing it to ourselves. So we're creating the divide. We're using social media. If you've seen The Social Dilemma, it's a great movie. We're creating the divide amongst ourselves. We're creating destruction of the earth. We're creating the fires. We're creating all the things that those prophecies spoke about and that those elders foresaw many generations into the future is now. And so it doesn't look good, but are we going to leave worse suffering for the future generations? That's the question. So are we going to just let it be up to them? My daughter told me when she was 16, I have no hope for the future. That crushed me inside like nothing else. I have no hope for the future. Can you imagine all these young people feeling like they have no hope for the future? So what are we going to do about it then? I mean, that's one thing that Josephine Mendamen, that grandma that I painted, and the one that was carrying the copper pail, she walked around all the Great Lakes because she said the waters are in trouble. And one of her elders asked her, well, what are you going to do about it? So whenever somebody comes to her and says this is the issue, she always asks people. She passed away last year, but she always asks people, well, what are you going to do about it? So what the issues are. What are you going to do about it? And then you can decide for yourselves what you're going to do. But I always think that it's really powerful to join with other people and try and do it together. So find people that are like-minded, even if it's just one little project, planting trees. Like that's big, that's huge. The world needs more trees. So, that's good, or saving a species that's at risk. That's really great too. All of those things are really important. I see that there's a lot of questions there's a few of them. So I'm gonna try and answer some of those. From Michael Watts, when you procure a hide from the moose, is there a traditional use for it, such as using the animal skin for clothing? Yeah, we use every part of the moose. We use the legs for tools for hide tanning. We use the brain for hide tanning. We eat the ears, the nose. I know it sounds weird, the ears, but basically you take it, you singe off all the hairs, and then you over a fire, and then you cook it for many long hours. It's actually quite delicious. We use the hides for clothing, for bags, for whatever we want to use them for, but it's very precious stuff. And anybody who's a hide tanner or a bead worker will know how precious home tanned hide is and how amazing it smells because it's smoked and it smells really good. Okay, whereas we as students, can we start with environmental conservation? I would find out if you have any species at risk in your area. That's normally not hard to find out from the state websites. You'll find out if there's species at risk. start to join in with other groups that are already doing conservation work in your area. Don't be shy, go join in, become a seed saver, start to work with heritage seeds, plant heritage seeds and become seed savers. What you said about not waiting for permission to change the system that are in play in our society really resonated with me. What are some of the ways to find communities that believe in changing our current systems? I don't know if you can find whole communities that believe in changing our current systems. I think you will just find individuals. And I think also that because people who are working towards a more just society and a better world are being labeled by the right wing as being fascists, we have to be very careful in the way that we do things and what we say. I think it's always insisting and proving and showing that we are, that they in fact are the terrorists and that they in fact are the ones that are hurting the environment. And we have to do that in a way that is for something rather than against something. So I once heard Mother Teresa, or I read an article where somebody said to her, would you, and I know that Mother Teresa is problematic, but this one thing that she said, it was really profound. And they said to her, would you join our anti-war rally? And she said, no, but if you make it for peace, I'll be there. And reading those few little words on a page really transformed my way of thinking. Because the question you need to ask yourselves, that I ask myself all the time, is what am I for? Rather than what am I, it's so easy to identify what we're against, but what are you for? And if you're for something, then go towards that. Okay, what else? Your thoughts, what are your thoughts on how to decolonize the museum and how to make these spaces more inclusive and supportive for Indigenous communities, often filled with their stolen belongings? Decolonizing spaces is something that I, in the most recently for my own life, has begun to move away from, because I'm not sure that those spaces can be decolonized. So I don't think that I think that there's good work being done by curators and people moving into those spaces to help those spaces understand how to be more respectful with items that are coming in or items that exist within their collections. And also the repatriation of items back to people, especially and particularly the bones of people. So right now in museums across Canada and the United States, there are very many with bones of Indigenous people sitting in drawers, which need to be buried properly and repatriated back, or at the very least, adopted into a community where they can be buried. There's some good examples happening right now in, I believe it's Mount Pleasant. They have, the Ojibwe Nation there has a repatriation program, and they're doing some really good work that you might want to look into. So I believe that to decolonize ourselves, we have to connect with the land. And so it's important to move ourselves out of those spaces and back onto the land. And that's sometimes it's not possible when we live in urban areas. So like I said, I'm just not sure that those spaces can be fully decolonized, but I do admire people who are working in those fields and making those efforts to do it. Henry David Thoreau said, "The man is richest whose entertainment is the cheapest." I like that a lot. That's so true. I believe that this is all in terms of what I see in the chat. Okay, anybody else?
I have a question. Hi, so I just want to say thank you for talking. It was very great to hear everything you had to say. And so I'm an art major, and I'm just wondering, like, on an art sense, like, is there more I can do to work towards these goals of not just sustainability, but activism with the environment?
Yes, you are needed, not just for your art, but for your mind. Because I really believe that artists, have a really weird way of looking at the world, and sometimes that different way is where the solutions can be found. So I really think that we need everybody in society. We need all of our ideas. We shouldn't just rely on the ideas of people that are in those positions of power or in positions of definitely not elected leaders, because they seem to be increasingly devoid of answers. And so artists are definitely needed for showing. Most human beings react positively to visuals. And so those make an impression sometimes more than words. And so the way that you can express your own feelings is going to influence how other people see the world. The way that you can express your own ideas, don't limit yourself to just art. So for example, with me, like, we're building a language camp. We're doing, like, there's very many places that I suppose people would say, well, you're not really an artist, but I don't really like labels anyway. So I mean, just do whatever you want to do, but keep moving with your mind, because if you're an artist, then your mind is what's going like this all the time. So just use it in whatever way you feel like it. Use it to join up with community, use it to make banners, use it to just do doodles and share them on your social media, use it to create great, grand pieces of works. Do whatever you feel like doing, but make sure that your art also serves a purpose. So for example, if you do get to a position where you're starting to sell your art, or maybe you're doing that already, then always give back, give back, give back, give back. Like Isaac and I, we do murals and we give the money to the camp. We do fundraising, we give the money to the camp. We're using social media crowdsourcing to give the money to other places, like the Tiny House Warriors in BC fighting the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So we'll like do fundraisers for them, or we'll do fundraisers for other land defenders. For, you might want to contribute to, it doesn't have to be land defense, it could be Black Lives Matter movement, it could be whatever. Or it could be language revitalization in your community, who knows? But you could always find a way to give back. And we give our art, we let people use our art for free. We give it free, copyright free to the community, broadly speaking, to North America. All of our banners, anybody can use them for any land defense action. We don't even want our names on them. Don't credit us, don't ask permission, just use them. So those are the things that you can do too, is by way of giving back. People need visuals for this revolution. So you're very, very needed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I do just want to take, Dr. Ceballos does want to ask that you complete the short feedback survey on, which is, the link is on the chat. So if we could hear from you guys, that would be great.
Yes, and I'll share this QR code that you can scan as well. Thank you all.
Wow, that's so fancy, Miguel.
Are there any last minute questions? I think this was just such a fantastic talk. I think it hit on a lot of important interrelated subjects.
I kind of have another question, if I can be selfish and ask another.
Yeah.
So this might be a little far out in meta, but this is where my brain kind of goes. And obviously there's a scientific standpoint behind climate change and everything, but do you believe that with all of these wildfires and like the amount of hurricanes that we've been having and all these natural disasters, do you believe that that's almost like the Earth's way of regulating itself and kind of like almost fighting back and trying to just like cure itself in what seems like a destructive way, but will end up not being so destructive, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, it does. I really like this question a lot because it's almost along the same lines as, do you believe that COVID is a punishment of sorts? So it's like, no, I don't. I don't believe that COVID is a punishment of any kind, but I do believe that human beings created this out of their actions, and that we as a species can fix it by changing our behavior. And so I don't believe in good or evil. I don't believe in, I mean, I shouldn't say I don't believe in good. I do believe in good. I believe in good actions and being a good person. But I don't believe in this idea of punishment or that there's this higher, greater power that's coming to like revenge itself or anything like that. And I know that's not what you were asking, but I'm just throwing that out there because it's along the same lines. I just believe that you know, our body regulates itself when we're sick. You know, we regulate our temperature all throughout the day. We regulate, you know, we have to do, our body takes care of itself so that we can live. And the Mother Earth is alive. And so she is going to do what she does in order to continue to have ecosystems that thrive. Mother Earth is very powerful. If anything, if we keep down this path, then she will continue on. It's not the Earth that's dying, it's us that are going to die, and we're going to take every living species with us. And you know, when you think about all the amazing, beautiful stories and pieces of art and, you know, love that's happened, you know, throughout the ages, you know, the poetry that's been read, the music that's been played and listened to and heard, the bird songs that have been sung. What a tragedy that would be if that's what we decided to do as a human species. But make no mistake, that's a decision that we are making collectively as a species. And so therefore, it's up to us collectively to do something about it. Even though we're in this David and Goliath type of situation where the 1% and the multinational corporations are using they're militarizing police forces to use against the majority of people. This is our time now to try and do something about it because the future doesn't look bright for that. So do I think the Earth is doing this on purpose in a conscious type of way? No. Do I think that we are responsible for our own demise? Yes. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
I have to actually share that my own teenage daughter has said recently that she believes that we're making ourselves go extinct. and like you said with your teenage daughter, it was pretty brutal to hear her say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is hope. There's hope because we're here. There's hope because we're alive. There's hope because the trees continue to grow and the seeds continue to sprout. You know, there's definitely hope here. There's hope because love exists here, because kindness and generosity and compassion still exists. So there's hope. We're not beyond a point where we can turn this around. We absolutely can. But it's not going to happen on its own or by wishful thinking.
Well, on that note, I think no, because that's a great positive, obviously way to end. But also, I agree that as long as we're teaching, as long as we're able to have these kinds of events too, to inform everyone, I think that there is hope, of course. And we just want to thank you very much for all of your generosity, for your generous time. Thank you to everybody who attended this from the various classes. I see some other donors or lenders to our Earth Day exhibit. I see James and some others here as well. So thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you for supporting the exhibit. Please stay tuned for more of our discussions. Miguel, when is Jada speaking? November
9th.
9th.
Same time, 3 o'clock, I believe.
Okay.
So yes, so stay tuned.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Christi. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it, every one of you. And I love you all. Power to the babies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.